for a long time, I thought there were rules. It seemed like it was okay for these things to kill animals. They could mess with humans all they want. They could destroy their economic system. They could destroy
Right.
their their psychology. But then I read about the Brazilian black boxes,
Right.
and now I'm no longer comfortable in these sort of false rules I had for myself so that I could sleep at night. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what do you think that there are rules, or do you think that like maybe the black boxes aren't? I mean, I never even heard of the black boxes till I read one of your books.
The black boxes you're referring to were called Chupas by the local hunters, and a lot of this activity happened in Colares Island off the northeast coast of Brazil back in the late 1970s. Um, but and I would say that there were people who died as a result of these interactions, getting zapped by these beams from craft that used to show up tremendously frequently. But if you look at the entire sort of scope of this phenomenon, this UFO phenomenon, if you want to use that word, since say 1947, when Kenneth Arnold first saw these things, and it became sort of into public awareness. So 75 years it's been going on. Um, out of that 75 years, it's really the exception rather than the rule that people are killed. People are killed. There are a lot of people who get too close to these things and have medical injuries, but you rarely come across, except for that Colares Island series of incidents, where people are so badly injured they get killed. And the question is, over time, we have a lot of data on what the performance characteristics of these objects are. We've accumulated a lot of data in the last 75 years, everything from radar tracks to ground traces, performances, but we have almost no data in terms of what their agenda or intent is. And, it may be that if people get too close to these objects, for example, the guy and his daughter that I just talked about in Oregon, and the medical injuries happen, is that as a result of them being in the wrong place at the wrong time, or is there some kind of intent there? And I don't think there's enough data, even in 75 years, to say that these are deliberately attacking people. I would tend to say that we don't have enough data on the agenda, quote unquote, of these objects. It's so I think it's an open question. I think it may be that a lot of these people are in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that whatever is interacting with humanity may not mean it harm necessarily. It's just that people who get too close to some of these things end up injured.
Yeah, that's the impression I get. So like the black boxes, I think there was a sentence in there about how maybe the he was too close to a beam that was set for stun or something like that.
Yeah.
Or there was one instance I remember reading about. I don't remember which one it was in, where some woman was driving on a road and it looked like the ship was malfunctioning and she thought Jesus was going to come out of the light, so she stayed and looked at it. And I'm thinking, don't, Jesus isn't coming out, don't stay and look at it. And she ended up with cancer, right?
Yeah, that's right. That happened in Texas. Yeah.
So and I think also with that, I forget his name, it was a very famous case they made a movie on with the logger who got abducted,
Oh, Travis
and
Walton.
he later came to the conclusion that they were trying to help him because he was too close to the ship. So even though it was horrifying for him, he now thinks that they were trying to restore his health.
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of instances of that kind of where there's evidence that the upshot of some of these people, they have healings, for example, as a result of interacting with some of these things. So it's not all doom and gloom, and so there seems to be a variety of interactions with these objects that can cause, people's lives to change in sometimes a good way. Sometimes that people are so overcome by shock and horror at sort of experiencing something that should never be real, that they can't handle it, and that's obviously another set of occurrences and consequences that happen. But I don't see any evidence that there's a deliberate attempt to harm humans in any consistent way.